Season 3 just started, and somewhere in the fandom, longtime readers are already bracing for something that the anime has already teased, but hasn't given viewers enough context to understand yet. Every long-running story has moments that change everything. Most shows leave it to the audience to decide which moments deserve that distinction. Mushoku Tensei does something different. 3 times in the anime, the story has practically stopped, looked directly at us and said, "This moment matters, remember it." It calls these moments turning points. They're not ordinary arc names. In the light novels, they appear as numbered chapter titles. In the anime, they become episode titles, and every time one appears, the direction of Rudeus' life changes for good. The completed light novel contains 5 numbered turning points in total. The anime has reached 3. And Season 3, which opened by adapting Ares' training arc, is the season that finally starts walking towards the 4th. So today, we're breaking down the first 3, what they actually changed, and why the words turning point 4 are enough to make light novel readers go quiet. The series never gives us an official dictionary definition of a turning point. Nobody sits Rudeus down and tells him, "Congratulations, you have entered another numbered trauma event." But the pattern is clear. A turning point is a moment that suddenly redirects Rudeus' life while also pulling him deeper into the larger forces operating around him. Sometimes it is a catastrophe, sometimes it is an encounter, sometimes it is a simple decision. What matters is that after it happens, Rudeus' path cannot continue in the same direction. That is the difference between a turning point and a normal dramatic moment. Plenty of anime have big fights, big deaths, and big reveals. Mushoku Tensei reserves this specific label for something narrower. The handful of moments that do not merely shake Rudeus. They permanently redraw the map of what his life is now. And the first one completely destroys the world he thought he understood. Turning Point 1, the Mana Calamity. Before Turning Point 1, Rudeus' life is unusually controlled. He is living in Roa, teaching Ares, studying magic, and slowly growing comfortably with the idea that his second life might actually work out. Because he retained his memories from his previous life, Rudeus often believes that he is more prepared than the children, and even many of the adults around him. Then the Mana Calamity happens. The Fetoa region is devastated, its population is scattered across the world, and Rudeus and Ares are teleported all the way to the Demon Continent. Rudeus is not teleported alongside them. He finds them after they arrive and decides to help them get home. That distinction matters. Turning Point 1 does not hand Rudeus a ready-made adventuring party. It throws 2 children into one of the most dangerous regions in the world, forcing them to trust a superb warrior they have never met. Rudeus' memories are not completely useless here. His ability to plan, negotiate, and think like an adult helps keep them alive. But those memories are no longer enough by themselves. Before the Calamity, Rudeus could feel mature while living in a protected environment. After it, he has become responsible for another person's survival. He has to earn money, navigate unfamiliar cultures, make life or death decisions, and manage public fears surrounding Rudeus and the superb race. Turning Point 1 transforms him from a talented kid living comfortably inside someone else's household into a traveler responsible for getting Ares home alive. It does not just remove his comfort, it forces him to find out whether the maturity he claims to have is actually real. Turning Point 2, Orsted. Turning Point 2 attacks a different part of Rudeus' confidence. By this point, Dead End has crossed the Demon Continent, survived monstrous threats, and escaped several disasters. Rudeus has grown powerful enough to believe that with enough preparation he can find a solution to almost anything. Then he meets Orsted. The encounter is terrifying before a fight even starts. Ares and Rudeus are both overwhelmed by instinctive fear. Orsted recognizes them. He knows who Rudeus is, who Ares is, and even who Paul is, but he doesn't recognize Rudeus. That alone tells us that something is wrong. From Orsted's perspective, Paul Greyrat is supposed to have 2 daughters. Rudeus should not be standing in front of him at all. Then Rudeus mentions Hitogami, the human god. Orsted immediately questions whether Rudeus is one of Hitogami's apostles. Rudeus denies the label but admits that Hitogami appears in his dreams and gives him advice. Orsted attacks. Rudeus is defeated almost instantly. Ares cannot stop him. Rudeus throws some of his strongest magic at Orsted and accomplishes almost nothing. Orsted punches through his chest and leaves him dying. Rudeus only survives because the Nahoshi intervenes and Orsted chooses to heal him. This is not the first time that Rudeus has been in danger, but it is the first time the story shows him exactly how insignificant his current strength is next to the most powerful being in this world. It also changes how we see Hitogami. He had been appearing to Rudeus since the Mana Calamity, offering advice that frequently produced useful results. Rudeus never trusted him completely, but he had started following his instructions because they seemed to work. Orsted's reaction reveals that Hitogami is not merely some strange supernatural guide, he has enemies, powerful ones. Turning Point 2 expands the entire scale of the story. Rudeus is no longer dealing with only monsters, adventures, and political conflict. He has accidentally stepped into a struggle between beings whose knowledge and power extend far beyond his own. The frightening part is not simply that Orsted defeats him, it is that Orsted possesses knowledge about people and events that should include Rudeus, and somehow it does not. Turning Point 3, the decision to go. Turning Point 3 is quieter. There is no mysterious sphere above the city, there is no dragon god walking through the fog. It begins with a letter. Rudeus learns that the party searching for Zenith is in serious trouble inside the Teleportation Labyrinth on the Bagarid continent. His first instinct is to help, but the decision is complicated. Sylphie is pregnant. Traveling to Bagarid could take years under normal circumstances. Rudeus has finally built a stable home, and leaving could put everything he has created at risk. Hitogami advises him not to go. After talking it through with the people around him, Rudeus initially decides to stay in Sharia. Then Norn announces that she will go instead. She is not strong enough, she is not prepared enough, but Paul is her father and she refuses to sit at home while he is in danger. That forces Rudeus to confront what his decision actually means. He changes his mind and leaves for Bagarid. That decision is Turning Point 3. Paul's death happens later during the battle against the Hydra. He dies saving Rudeus after Rudeus is caught off guard during the Hydra's final attack. But it would be misleading to say that Rudeus going to Bagarid simply causes Paul's death. Rudeus also discovers and rescues Roxy. His knowledge and power are essential to reaching Zenith and defeating the Guardian of the Labyrinth. The rescue succeeds because he is there. Even though that victory comes with an unbearable loss, that is what makes Turning Point 3 so painful. Rudeus makes the responsible choice. He goes to help his family, he saves people who may otherwise have died, and he still loses his father. The lesson is not that taking action is wrong, is that maturity does not guarantee a painless outcome. Sometimes the correct decision still leaves scars. Here is something easy to miss if you watch these three arcs as separate events instead of as one continuous pattern. Hitogami is quietly present throughout all of them. He's not in the room during the Mana Calamity itself, but once the dust settles and Rudeus is stranded on the Demon Continent, Hitogami begins appearing in his dreams and offering guidance that repeatedly proves useful. Turning Point 1 is the event that opens the door, Hitogami is what walks through it. By Turning Point 2, that relationship has gone from helpful stranger to something with actual stakes attached. The moment that Orsted learns that Rudeus has direct contact with Hitogami, he stops treating him like a harmless anomaly. Whatever Hitogami is, learning that Rudeus receives advice from him is enough for Orsted to treat Rudeus as an enemy. By Turning Point 3, Hitogami is not just offering strange directions from the sidelines, he gives Rudeus a direct recommendation: do not go. Rudeus initially listens but ultimately rejects that advice and leaves anyway. It is not the first time that Rudeus has questioned Hitogami. He was suspicious of him from the very first meeting, but it is the most consequential rejection of Hitogami's guidance so far. 3 turning points in, we have gone from who is this person to why does Orsted consider him an enemy? And finally, whose interest does his advice actually serve? That is the real erosion of trust. The question is no longer whether Hitogami's information can be useful. It clearly can. The question is whether useful information and honest intentions are the same thing. And that is exactly what Turning Point 4 has the reputation it does. It takes every question the story has quietly built around Hitogami, the mystery, the hostility, and Rudeus' growing uncertainty, and finally brings them to a head. Each turning point redirects the story in a different way, but the more interesting shift is not necessarily in what happens, it is how much control Rudeus has over it. The first turning point happens to him, he has no say in the Mana Calamity, it simply arrives and rearranges his entire life. The second turning point confronts him. Rudeus approaches Orsted willingly, but once the encounter begins, he has almost no power to shape how it ends. The third turning point requires him to choose. Nobody physically forces Rudeus to go to Bagarid. Norn's decision forces him to examine his own reasoning and admit that he cannot allow her to go in his place. That is the actual escalation, Not that each event is objectively worse than the last, because Turning Point 1 alone destroys an entire region and kills countless of people we never even met. The escalation is in how personally responsible Rudeus becomes for the outcome. Growing stronger does not make Rudeus immune to mistakes, grief, or consequences. It simply gives him more power to decide what kind of a person he becomes when those consequences arrive. Turning Point 4 occupies a strange place in the fandom. Light novel readers know exactly what it is. Anime-only viewers usually know only its reputation, but anime viewers have been trained to recognize what the title means. During Season 1, nobody knew what Turning Point represented the first time it appeared. Now we do. We know it means the story is about to change directions. We know Rudeus' current life will not simply continue untouched, and because Season 3 spent its opening stretch on Ares' growth before folding back into Rudeus' life with Sylphie, Roxy, Lucy, Norn, and Aisha, the story is taking time to remind us exactly what he has to protect. That is where the dread comes from. Not from knowing precisely what will happen, but from understanding what kind of story this is. Mushoku Tensei does not use the words turning point casually. Season 3 premiered by doing exactly what longtime readers expected. It opened on Ares, not Rudeus. She has spent the time since leaving him at the Sword Sanctum with Ghislaine, training under the sword god Galfarion. Her goal is to become strong enough to eventually face Orsted and stand beside Rudeus as an equal instead of trailing behind him. Once that opening stretch wraps, the story folds back to Rudeus. He has accepted Roxy as his second wife. Sylphie has given birth to Lucy. The Grey Rat household is attempting to build something resembling a peaceful daily life after everything that happened in Belgrade. From there, the season is expected to move into the material involving Nanahoshi research in Perugia's floating fortress. That storyline introduces powerful new figures, digs deeper into the world's summoning magic, and places someone close to Rudeus in serious danger. But the floating fortress is not Turning Point 4 by itself, it is part of the road leading toward it. That distinction matters because the most dangerous moments in Mushoku Tensei rarely announce themselves with an army marching over the horizon. Sometimes they begin with a letter. Sometimes they begin with a conversation, and sometimes they begin after the obvious crisis is over, when Rudeus has already convinced himself that the danger has passed. If you want to get ahead of this instead of simply waiting for it to hit you, here's where to focus your attention as these episodes air. Watch how much time the season spends on Rudeus' home life before anything goes wrong. It is the story quietly raising the stakes by making sure you understand exactly what he stands to lose. Watch Hitogami's appearance closely, especially how he frames his advice. He has repeatedly given Rudeus information useful enough to earn his cooperation, but usefulness is not the same thing as honesty. Someone can tell you the truth, leave out the part that matters, and still manipulate every decision you make. The real question is not whether Hitogami's advice works, it is what outcome he is trying to create when Rudeus follows him. And watch how the other characters react whenever Hitogami's name comes up. Orsted's reaction to learning that Rudeus had direct contact with him revealed more than an exposition dump ever could. That probably will not be the last time we learn something about Hitogami through someone else's fear instead of through his own words. 3 turning points down, the anime has already shown us what it looks like when Rudeus' world is destroyed, when his strength is exposed as meaningless, and when the correct choice still costs him something he can never get back. Season 3 is walking him straight toward a 4th, and this time we are not walking in completely blind. We know what these 2 words mean now. We know the door does not stay open for a long time after one of these moments hits.